This morning we're going to look at 4 readings, and when these readings are read one after the other, it forms a very interesting picture, each one being a piece of the puzzle. So I'm just going to give these readings to you, and you might want to pause and read them first, or we can just read them as we work through the message. So the first reading is James chapter 2, verses 14 to 25. The second reading is 1 John 3, verses 11 to 24. The third reading, 1 Corinthians 13, 1 to 7. And the final reading, 1 John 4, verses 7 to 15. But I want us to look at a psalm before we go any further, which has tremendous bearing on the message today. So if we go to Psalm 145 and we read verse 18, Psalm 145 verse 18. And here we read something very interesting. The Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. The Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in truth. And that in truth bit is extremely important. So we might think that the Lord is near to all who call on him, and that's the end of the verse, but of course it's added, no, to all who call on him in truth. Now this word truth in the Hebrew is emet, E-M-E-T-H. Its root is aman, A-M-A-N, which that's where we get the word amen from. So this emet, the meaning of it is real, or concrete, substance. So it doesn't have to do with something being a statement or doctrine being true or false. It has to do with reality, concrete substance of reality. So we could read, literally, it would read, the Lord is near to all who call on him, to all who call on him in reality. So how are we to understand that? Well, it means that there can be something coming out of our mouths, a cry to God coming out of our mouths, but in our lives, it is not reflected in reality. So there is a disconnect between the cry or the prayer from our mouths and the cry that comes out of our lives, the reality of our lives. So God is actually looking at not what is coming out of your mouth when you call on him, but what is coming out of your inner being, your reality, your life. And those two need to match up. And he says, to those I am near. I draw near to those. It's not just a mouth cry, it is a life cry. The two match up. So with that in mind, let us go to James chapter 2. And of course there we have this interesting, and you'll read, the reading there is 14 to 25 of James, and it's quite familiar to all of us, what he writes about faith and deeds. So, what good is it, my brothers, if a man claims to have faith? So there's a claim. There are words, you see. I claim to have faith, but has no deeds. Can such faith save him? And of course, later on in 18, he says, but someone will say, you have faith, I have deeds. Show me your faith without deeds, and I will show you my faith by what I do. So here we have, especially there in verse 14, what good is it, my brothers, if a man claims to have faith but has no deeds? Okay, so take that with you. Let's take that with us as we move along. So we have a claim, verbal claim, and then we have that which is the reality or the substance of it. And the two go together and form a whole. Let's move on to a very interesting passage in 1 John chapter 3, and this is the passage that I actually wanted to spend a bit of time on this morning. 1 John chapter 3, and we are going to read verse 18 in particular. Now, the reading that I gave you earlier was 11 to 24. Perhaps you have had time to read that, but let us go specifically to verse 18. 1 John 3 verse 18, I'm reading from the NIV. Dear children, let us not love with words or tongue, but with actions and in truth. Now there we have something similar again. Look carefully at the verse. There are things that are put together. So first of all, words or tongue. So that is actually the Greek word for language. Words or language, but with actions and in truth. So do you see that words, so words go with actions. So he makes two statements that are similar, words or tongue, words or language, and then he follows it up with actions and truth. So what he's doing is he's putting the words, linking that with actions, that's the opposite, or the complement, the complementing factor, which completes the words and actions, or language and truth. So here we have a passage in the New Testament, so it's Greek. So what are we to make of this word truth? In not with language only, but in truth. Words and actions, language and truth. Now this word truth is aletheia, alethes in the Greek, and that means unveiled reality. That's the real meaning of the word. Unveiled reality. So that's amazing. We're continuing this concept that we started in Psalm 145, and it runs through James, and it also runs through 1 John 3 here. So it says not just with language, but in reality. Okay, do not love in language, but in reality. That's really literally what the Greek would be saying there. So now, what do we see here in 1 Corinthians? Let's go there. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. So we've learned now that it is very important that the words must have an action attached to it. Otherwise, it is incomplete. You can't just have words, you must also have an action. But I want to show you something interesting that is really worth our consideration this morning. And of course, the example used here is love. Just like we have in 1 John 3, it says, do not love just with language, but in reality. And here in 1 Corinthians 13, Paul is also speaking about love. But now listen very carefully. And I'm reading from verse 1. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but have not love, I am nothing. And here's the part that is very relevant to us. If I give all I possess to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. Okay, so now look at what we have learned from James and from 1 John 3. What have we learned? We have seen that we need to have coupled to the words an action. But it can't just be an action that we manufacture, which is where I think many Christians go. They say, right, I get the instruction. I cannot just have words, I must back it up with action. And then what they do is, right, I will add to these words of mine this action. There we go. I will say I love the person, and then I will act towards them in a loving way. But there's a problem with that. And Paul, in 1 Corinthians 13, points out this problem to us. What does he say? Look, isn't he saying that there are actions here? Look, he's talking about actions. He's talking about giving all I possess to the poor, surrendering my body to the flames. Those are serious actions. Serious actions. So you basically have extreme actions. Possess, give all I possess to the poor. But what does he say about these actions? He says they are worthless. Worthless when? They are worthless when love as a substance is not residing inside. Those actions are worthless if they do not proceed from the substance of love, the reality of love inside. And that's a shocking and profound truth. We cannot, in other words, in our Christian walk, say to ourselves all the time, all right, you must now add to your words actions, and then we say, all right, what will I do? Okay, I will do this, I will do that. But those actions are actually manufactured. They do not proceed from a place of reality of that substance, the substance of generosity, the substance of love. So if I'm giving in order to add an action to my word, so I say I will give you and then I give, but it's not proceeding from a generosity in the heart, Paul would say that's useless. That is a meaningless action that you've just added to your words. Oh my. Or if I say, oh, I love this person, and then I manufacture a loving action and I go, oh, there we go, I'm so happy with myself. Now look, I have added an action to my words. Paul would say that is a useless action because it has not proceeded from the substance of love inside your heart. And this is a very important thing because I have realized that many Christians, including myself, we get into this place where we manufacture Christian actions. We actually think about it and we say, all right, what will now constitute a Christian action? Let me think, this will constitute a Christian action. And then we do it. And then we're so happy with ourselves, but it's actually meaningless because it has proceeded not from the substance of love or generosity or kindness in our hearts. It has proceeded from our brains. And you know, let's be honest. At best, that kind of Christian life is a fake, a pretense, a fraud. At worst, it is actually saying to God that he's a fool because he can't tell the real from the fake. That is crazy. And we need to think about this in our own lives. Your Christian actions and mine have to proceed from the substance of that thing in us, whether it's generosity or love, especially love as it speaks about here in 1 John 3 and also in 1 Corinthians. And of course, we face a problem here because we know, even now we can say, oh, but Werner, I'm really awful inside. I really am. And if I were to stop pretending that I'm actually nice and Christian, it would be terrible. What would people think of me? But my advice to you is stop. Stop trying to fake Christian actions. Do you think God is stupid? His very instruction to us here is that those actions are useless. You think you're adding actions to your words. You're doing nothing of the kind. So my advice to you is to stop. Stop doing it and say to him, Lord, these actions of mine are not proceeding from the actual substance of the matter inside of me. And I want us to go, just as a final reading here, to 1 John chapter 4. Where does this substance, in particular, under discussion for us this morning, is the issue of love. Where does this substance come from? Now let's go and read. And of course, in the beginning, I gave you 1 John 4, verses 7 to 15 to read, and I'll just read a few verses here. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. So, and then we go on. If we love one another, this is verse 12, God lives in us and his love is made complete in us. And look at verse 16, God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in him. In this way, love is made complete among us. Yes, indeed. Where does the substance come from? It comes from God. He is love. And if he is not in there, if he is not in us, then by definition, loving actions cannot proceed out of us. If the substance of love is not there, if he is not inside, we can only produce fake loving actions that are useless. And so perhaps this morning you even want to, right now, if God has spoken to you, you want to come clean with him and say, Lord, actually, my whole Christianity is built on manufactured Christian actions. They do not proceed from you dwelling inside of me. Forgive me. Lord, I abandon the effort. I stop. And I do not want to go on unless the reality of you is in me, so that my actions can be matched with a reality. My words can be matched by not just actions, but actions that are rooted in reality inside of me.